Yo, what up guys? I wanted to make a video going over my tier list for all the abilities in Plunderstorm, and I've already hit level 40, and in solos, which I mainly run because I don't have other people to play with, unfortunately, because they don't really play WoW, I win a ton in solos. So I wanted to go over what I think are the best abilities, especially for playing solo and carrying the game. Now, first up, we're going to go in the order of the abilities from left to right, but just a quick note, I want to preface that the abilities on the farthest left are going to be better than the abilities to the right of them. So let's say I have Earth Shatter in A tier. If I put Firestorm here, that would mean that Earth Shatter, in my opinion, is better a little bit. Okay, just that way you know. Okay, so first up we have Firestorm. Now, I know a lot of people want to put it in S tier, right? I think it's bait. I think, and I do run this occasionally, but I do not think it's the best in the game. The reason why Firestorm isn't as good as a lot of people think is that you can counter it. And just to give you a few examples of how to counter it, you have a mobility option here that can counter it. All mobility options can counter it. Defensive abilities can counter it. You know, like every ability that I put here can counter Firestorm, and a lot of them are on a lower cooldown than Firestorm. So basically you're trading 1 for 1 in terms of abilities, but without actually investing too much into it, whereas the person using Firestorm invests like a 12-second or higher cooldown into that ability, and then it doesn't get any value. And for me, whenever I fight people who use Firestorm, I turn the tide on them and I win the fight pretty handily. So it's okay, it's very, very good, but it's more of a pub stomper ability in my opinion. And we have Earth Shatter. Now, it's going to be B tier. B tier is basically good. Can you win the game with this ability? That would go in B tier, but it's not OP on its own. I think it can be a great combo, especially in the mid game if you haven't had a lot of options. You can definitely pop off of this ability, and I've won a lot of games with Earth Shatter. Now, I do think it has a lot of weaknesses, and it's pretty clunky, has a long cast time, but if you land it, it does a lot of damage. However, landing it, especially in the late game where everybody has low cooldowns and great abilities, it's quite hard. So I think you could definitely win with this ability, and it's good, but it isn't the best, okay? Now, Holy Shield. Holy Shield is an okay ability. C tier is going to be okay, but you're going to want to replace it ASAP. And Holy Shield, in my opinion, is one of those abilities where it's okay early, but you definitely want to swap it out. And we have Manosphere. I don't know where I want to put this one. I see a lot of people use it, but I really don't like it. I think the good thing about it is it does pretty good damage, and it's a crowd control ability, and it allows you to kite. But I think late game, I don't really see a lot of people with it, and I always beat people who have Manosphere, so I don't think it's honestly that good. They have Lightning Bulwark. I'm going to put this in the A tier. I know it's kind of underrated, but I've been using it a ton. Basically, it's a defensive, damage, and mobility ability, and it allows you to become invulnerable to one attack. So when you fight things like Firestorm, you can proc it and run away from the Firestorm while doing damage to them. You can say if they're running Windstorm, you can block that ability, negate the stun, and then turn the tide on them. So it's a very cool ability in that you can turn a fight around. However, it is a little bit harder to use because you actually have to press it at the right time. But I like the ability. I think it's fun to use, and I think it's really strong. Then we have the Stealth ability, another mobility option that allows you to get the drop on people with a relatively low cooldown. It's a good ability to have. I don't think it's the best mobility option, but I think it's up there in terms of how strong it is. We have Windstorm, which is the stun ability. I think this one, I don't know if I want to put an S or high A, like the highest A. I run this ability a ton. I think the ability to stun people is extremely strong, especially in the early mid game. If you land a stun into some like a Firestorm or a Searing Axe, something like that, they are going to get chunked. I'm leaning high A+ tier, maybe S tier, maybe A+, I'm not sure. The trap ability, another B tier option for me. It is extremely strong and can lock people down, and it's extremely strong in the mid game. However, I think that there's a lot of counter options. Things like repel can just run through it. Fey Form, in my opinion, the best mobility option, and just hard counters it. In my opinion, it's a strong ability. You can win with it, but there's better options in my opinion. Ryme Arrow. This one is kind of like a a noob trap. I see a lot of people use it, and it's kind of good to annoy people and to prevent them from healing, and it's good for griefing people. But if you want to win the game on your own and be able to win 1v1s, you definitely do not want Ryme Arrow. So if you want to grief people, you can run it, but if you want to win, don't run it. Change it out for something better later. Snowstorm. I think it's better than the stealth ability. A tier. It can allow you to set up kills, kite abilities out. If somebody pops Firestorm on you, for example, you can pop Snowstorm and completely kite it out while doing damage to them and immobilize them practically to land a stun or to land damage. It's a really, really strong ability, especially if you're running more of a kiting build. Now we come to our first S tier ability, Firestorm. And the reason why this is such a good ability, it does have a long cooldown, but it is a damage reduction, extremely high damage reduction, mobility option, and ignores crowd control. It can get you out of crowd control if you get stunned or something, and it can pass through crowd control abilities while it's active. So it just basically does everything. It's a defensive movement ability and a crowd control breaking ability as well. Extremely OP in my opinion, by far the best movement ability in the game. And then we have repel. I think it's kind of up there with Lightning Bulwark, and I know a lot of people like Repel more, probably because it is a better counter to Firestorm, and a lot of people run Firestorm, but there are so many counters to Firestorm already that I honestly don't really go for Repel. And every other ability, usually outside of Firestorm, is more of a big burst of damage in one hit, meaning Lightning Bulwark can invulnerable the damage of pretty much every ability in the game outside of Firestorm, which means that Lightning Bulwark, in my opinion, gets more value more of the time because you invulnerable the damage that people use, like a Searing Axe or something like that, and then you get damage and mobility, and you can chase people down and trade extremely well. Whereas Repel, it's more of like, oh, you're invulnerable for like 3 seconds or whatever, and then it does an AoE, but it makes you really, really immobile during it. So unless you're fighting Firestorm, I think Lightning Bulwark is just better than it majority of the time. But don't get me wrong, it's still a really, really strong ability. Now we have, I forget the name of this ability, Searing, what is it, like Slicing Wind or something like that. Now, this is by far the best mobility option in the game. And I don't see a lot of people running it. I see a good amount of people, but not a whole lot. And the reason why I like it so much is that when you fully upgrade it, it has a 6-second cooldown, and it goes extremely far whenever you use it in terms of mobility. So what ends up happening, at least in the late game, is sometimes I won't even run a utility ability that has movement, like Firestorm or something. Instead, I'll rely solely on Slicing Wind and just run people down with it. Even if they have things like Firestorm and the stealth ability, they have long cooldowns and not that long of range, and I'll literally catch up to them even if they have 2 mobility abilities with Slicing Wind only. So in my opinion, it's kind of OP. It does good damage, low cooldown, and has a very high mobility. It can do everything you want it to and more. I think it's one of the best abilities in the game. And then we have Searing Axe, which in my opinion is better than Firestorm and probably the best damage ability in the entire game. And the reason why it's so good is it does extremely high damage on a relatively low cooldown, but it is also kind of hard to play around. It's not like Firestorm where there's a cast time and then a huge animation for it. Sure, it has an animation at the beginning, but if you hit the ability and you can do the double jump trick where you double jump right before casting it, keeping your momentum during the cast time, and then you're able to keep pace with other people trying to run away with you while landing the ability. So I think Searing Axe is the best damage ability in the entire game, and it's not really that close, I'm going to be honest. Now we have Star Bomb, which in my opinion, I did make a video on it, but I think it's kind of clunky. I think they need to rework it a little bit. Yeah, it's fun to use, especially in the mid game when people don't have a lot of options, but if they run a counter like Lightning Bulwark, Repel, anything that can negate the damage, or Firestorm hard counters it too, you can pretty much never land Star Bomb ever. So yeah, it's fun if you land it, but if you can't, which is the vast majority of the time, it isn't a very good ability. Now you have Storm Archon, another ability which in my opinion is pretty bad. You can get it early and use it, but you want to switch it out pretty much immediately with any other option. Now we have Toxic Mackerel. I don't know if I want to put it in B or A tier because I've actually won quite a few games with it. I think it's definitely not as good as Searing Axe, but it also can win you games. So I'm going to put it in B tier, honestly. Not the best, but it can be pretty dang good. It can prevent people from using barrel to run away. It can prevent people from stealthing and getting away because of the dot. So in my opinion, it's a good damage ability, not the best, but you can definitely win with it. And then we have the trap ability that launches you away. It's kind of like a movement ability slash kiting ability. I'm going to put it in B tier. I think it's okay. I don't think it's the best option out there. I think there are better mobility options, but you can win with it. It's a decent ability in my opinion. Now we have Hunter's Chains, which in my opinion are actually really, really good. And the reason for that is I think that it kind of doubles up like a crowd control ability and a movement ability. You can use it to chain people and pull them back. And during that pullback animation, you can charge up an ability. So what I like to do with Hunting Chain is I grip people, pull them into me by outranging them. And then while they're flying to me, I pop my Searing Axe. So like right when they land, my Searing Axe will hit them. Or you can do something like Hunter's Chain, pull them into your Earth Shatter, things like that, which are really, really fun. So I think it's actually quite a good ability. I've won quite a few games with it, and it's a very, very anti-kite ability. I love it so much. Now we have the Leap ability, and I'm really not sure where I want to put it. I think it would be better. It's a crowd control and movement ability, so it can have a lot of value, and it could be a really, really good setup ability for you to land on people and to crowd control them, followed up by more damage. However, the thing that, in my opinion, makes it not that good is that it has a clunky kind of mechanic where you can't really control where you're going to land, and it's very, very hard to land the stun, and if you don't, it loses a lot of value. So in my opinion, it's a good ability. You can win with it, but it's definitely not the best. I think other mobility options beat it out. But yeah, this is going to be my overall tier list. As you can imagine, I run a lot of Searing Axe, a lot of Slicing Wind, Faveform, Windstorm, Lightning Bulwark. My main build actually is Searing Axe, Slicing Wind, Windstorm, and Lightning Bulwark. The reason for that is you get great mobility, great damage, crowd control, and a defensive cooldown. It does pretty much everything you want it with that build, and that is, if you want to win, those 4 abilities all tied together, in my opinion, are the best build you can get. Honorable mention to adding Faveform in there if you would like over Lightning Bulwark, but Lightning Bulwark, like I talked about earlier, is a great damage ability as well. So yeah, that is going to be my tier list. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want to win games, follow this tier list. I promise you, you will win more games if you go for the builds that I talked about or the abilities I talked about. But anyways, guys, thank you so much for watching. I'm out.